All right. That's about as much patience as I have. So let's get this started. So welcome back to this week's webinar. It's really crazy to see kind of how this has really been taking off, and seeing everyone's feedback and how much they're learning. To be honest, when we first started this, I was not expecting this to be like happening every single week. But the fact that we all these coaches are signing up to want to continue to educate our sport and educate it directly to Blast is so big. And I'm so happy that every single one of you took your time out of your day today to come and learn more from 3 incredible speakers again. So I'm going to talk about who's with us today, or excuse me, before I do that, question and A. Sorry, you can go back on it then, Q&A. So if you guys want to send in questions, please do so in the chat that's on the bottom, your bottom right. We're going to wait for all question and answers at the end of their presentations, and any questions we do not get to, we will answer via email. So don't worry, we got you. Okay, so our lineup for today, another real great one. So kicking us off and starting this off is going to be Matt Lyle from Fresno State. I'm sure every single person out there knows who Matt Lyle is, and if you don't, Google him immediately. He's just a huge ambassador for hitting in both baseball and in softball, a hitting consultant for both sports, has coached previously at South Carolina and now is at Fresno State. So we have his awesome brain to tell us some stuff today. So he's going to be first up. Then we're going to have JB Slimp. He came back to enlighten us. If anyone heard his presentation from last week, you know you got some good stuff. Like, that was fire, JB, complete fire. And so we wanted to try to get him back on us and be able to continue to educate us. And I'm excited to learn more that he has out for us today. And last but not least, coming out from the Midwest, the 3-batter today is Jeremy Chell. He is the director for Midwest Speed, Midwest Power. Guys, get your notepads ready. I've seen his presentation, and it is freaking legit. We got some good stuff today. So please make sure you're submitting your questions throughout this entire webinar. We want to make sure that we can get to every single question and answer them because this is truly for you. So let's start us off with our catalyst at the top. Matt, take us away.
Hey, thanks, Francesca. Thanks for having me on. Everybody, thanks for joining us this morning, afternoon, if you're on the East Coast. And, today I thought it'd be good. I'm going to speak mostly to coaches today, and travel ball coaches, high school coaches, any coach. And I know most of you are parents / coaches as well. So I wanted to share a little bit just about how I use Blast for hitting development and how you can use it as well. And I'm going to apologize in advance for all the baseball graphics in my presentation. I'm going to give you a very short version of a much larger presentation that I gave to MLB front offices and some D1 coaches in baseball a few months ago. But I'm going to really just focus this hour-long presentation into this much shorter, focus down on Blast motion part of it. So I'm going to walk you through just quickly through the process that I use and the system that I utilize to use Blast and hitting development and to create a roadmap for that. And if we have any time at the very end, Francesca will have to let me know, and I'll show a couple of our player swing profiles at Fresno State and kind of talk about them a little bit. So let me get this going here. So this is, again, just a shorter version of what I call my hitting development roadmap. And I'm gonna go through this stuff pretty quickly, but here we go. So as a hitting coach and as a coach or a travel ball coach, high school coach, college coach, the biggest thing that we've got to kind of do when we first get started is have a hitting philosophy. What is your hitting philosophy? You like bat speed? You don't like bat speed? What are the things what you're really about? And then for me, as a hitting coach or any coach for that matter, I like to interview my players before I do anything. I want to know, what are their goals? What do they want to get out of the season? What's the best way to provide feedback and criticism? I work with a lot of major league players that love the data. They love to talk about data. They want to know their exit speed and attack angles. They want to know everything. And then I have other hitters who they see the ball, hit the ball, and they don't want to know all the data. They don't want to know all the things. So we've got to be really careful about understanding how our players, get feedback, how they like to receive it. Some hitters like brutal honesty, and a lot of players like to sugarcoat it. So, we've got to be able to kind of get to know them a little bit before we dive into all this stuff. And so I like to interview our players first, get to know them a little bit. And then we do a physical screen. I'm on base U certified, and you don't have to be, but you can create your own screen. But the goal of me as a hitting coach is, whether I have 20 hitters in our program, 10 hitters, or 20 hitters, I want to make our hitting plans very individualized. Every single hitter needs to have their own individual hitting plan. Everybody can't do the exact same thing. We've got really hyper mobile hitters. We've got some really stiff, rigid movers. And so we always do a physical screen, figure out what they can do, whether it's, pelvic tilt and separation. And we want to be able to create some type of a screen. So that's what I always do, a physical screen first after the interview. And then, I think for every team out there, and I'll focus mostly on blast here, but, what's your budget? What is the things that you can afford to spend money on? What I call the make it work budget for me is the things that I've got to have that are really essential. If I'm a hitting coach or a pet parent or travel ball coach who really wants to get into this stuff, I've got to have a pocket radar. I've got to have a blast motion sensor. I've got to be able to throw a little bit. And like I said, most of us all have iPhones or an Android phone that we can use for video, and showing how to do things on spreadsheets is pretty free out there. And then we always do a vision assessment. We use UHIT. There's GameSense, Synaptic. There's all kinds of screens that you can create. We have a weight room screen, figuring out how strong our hitters are. So like I said, I'm going to skip over all that stuff today and just talk about a little bit more about how we organize it. So for me, as a hitting coach, I've got to organize all the data that we're going to use in Blast. And Blast, if you're a coach, has Blast Connect, and it's really good for organizing all that. Some of us like to use Excel a bit more. There's different programs called Tableau and Track. And I said, again, I won't get into all those things, but I'll give you an example. So last year I was a hitting strategist for the Chicago White Sox, and this is kind of a thing that I kind of built out from the past and added to as well. And for us, this is how I tracked it. It was just a plain old Excel spreadsheet. And for us, we were able to track hitters, and we coded things green and red based on, above average or below average. And we create, and for me, one of the biggest mistakes of data that is made right now out in the hitting Twitter world and out in coaching is that we talk about average launch angles and average attack angles. And a great example that I use a lot of times is we had a player last year, a pro player, that their average launch angle was 11 degrees. And when you really dug into the data, they hit half their balls at 45 degrees and half their balls at negative 10 degrees. And so they never actually hit a ball 11 degrees. And because of that, they had an average launch angle of 11. So, a lot of times averages can really give us some false data. So we created launch angle buckets and approach angle buckets that we want our hitters in. And if you look at the top frame over there, you can see just the launch angle buckets. You can see these different buckets and what the WOBAs are for those, expected WOBAs are for those. And so it's just a better way to track. That's just one of the ways that we do it. Like I said, you can come up with your own system, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then I talked a lot about individual hitting plans. So here's, I coached at the University of Missouri for baseball and at Fresno State here with softball. And so I just want to give a couple examples of fall hitting plans and spring hitting plans. And so we use all the metrics here. You can see bat speed, launch angle, attack angle back then. And here's the drills they would use. And at the bottom, you can see the areas of improvement and the hierarchy of needs. And if you look over to the right, you can see Haley Fuller. Here's some of the drills she has. Here's just a couple areas of improvement we're trying to work on. And she's got some goals. She wants to be in the 80-mile-an-hour club. And if you really look at her assessment down at the bottom, you can see all these blast metrics: connection at impact, early connection, her average attack angle, her max bat speed, hand speed, exit velocity. And she was at 79 miles an hour exit velocity. She's trying to get into the 80-mile-an-hour club. And so we track these. And for me, this being a full-time job, and I know that not everybody can do that, we try to update these every week. Sometimes it was every 2 weeks, but we were always trying to create this assessment and just always reassessing. Some of the things I would advise coaches, if once you're doing all this data and you're trying to get into it, you really need to gamify it. I will tell you that if softball or baseball, whatever you coach, your kids, they want to gamify everything. We've got several players play Fortnite every night, all night, and I can tell you that in the minor leagues and pro baseball, down to like 12-year-olds, everyone's playing Fortnite and other type of games. I've got 5 kids, and they're all playing the different games too. So in order to just make this fun and make this something that I want them to be a part of, we got to gamify it. So for us, we always have leaderboards and competitions. We do 2-on-2 tournaments in the sense of, so maybe it's an exit speed, maybe it's attack angle, whatever the thing is that you want to make important, you can make different competitions of it. I got it from Daniel Nicholson. They did a game where they said the first one to how many swings it took you to get to 500 miles per hour of bat speed, and so how many swings did it take you to get there, and your team lowest amount of swings wins. For us, coaching softball at the University of South Carolina and again at Fresno State, I created what's called the 80-mile-an-hour club. And so if you can hit 80 miles an hour exit velocity, you got your name on the board in the 80-mile-an-hour club. And the story is almost exactly the same at South Carolina and at Fresno State. That in the fall, when we assessed everybody, we probably had 2 to 3 80-mile-an-hour club members. And by the spring, January, February, I think both teams had 10 80-mile-an-hour club members. And at Fresno State, we were so close, had 3 players that were 79 miles an hour. So we were almost our entire roster got into the 80-mile-an-hour club, where when we started in the fall and we started assessing hitters with our blast motion, it really was only a couple players. So and for us, we're trying to create t-shirts or prizes, things that make them want to jump into this 80-mile-an-hour club or whatever club that you want to create, leaderboards, and whatever you measure is what you're going to master. So for us, we're always measuring, we're always talking about it. We have a leaderboard of 15 different categories in our hitting facility, from bat speed to exit velocity to number of reps, you name it, we post it up there and we talk about it and celebrate it a lot. And so those are just some of the ways that we do it. Let's see here. I said I'm gonna run through all this stuff really quickly, and I apologize for that, but that's what we have today time-wise. And so here's a great example of a tracking and retesting. So here's a hitter that I had a couple of years ago, and we were tracking every week his exit velocity, his launch angles, his distance, average distance, his point of contact. So on the top is his hit tracks data, on the bottom is his blast motion data, and you can see every week his attack angle was getting higher and higher, which also his distances were getting higher and higher. His max exit velocity was made huge jumps over the course of a month. He gained 7 miles an hour of average exit velocity. His bat speed jumped from an average of 61 to 66. So we were able to track every week. And so this way we can really see, are we actually making a difference in these hitters? Are we actually getting better? And if we're not, and the numbers are going down, what are we doing wrong? Is it something the athlete is doing wrong? Is it something the coaches are not doing well? So by creating some type of graph like this, we're able to really track week by week what they're up to. And so here's a little closer glimpse at it. So this was bat speed and attack angle over the course of 5 weeks, and you can see the average bat speed and max bat speed, and the average attack angle in black, and the max bat speed in green. And you can kind of see the progress. That's the progress we want to see. That if we're creating a chart like this, we want those numbers to go up. For him, his attack angle was something that we were really focusing on, so it really made a big jump. And same with his bat speed and exit speed. As you can see, each week it got higher and higher. And so some of the things that I want to talk about, just some advice and some lessons that I've learned through this, is that do not get overwhelmed by all the data of blast motion. There's so many metrics. For me, if I'm giving advice to a dad, player, coach, figure out what metrics are most important to you. It might be bat speed, it might be attack angle, it might be rotational acceleration. I know for me, attack angle is something that's really important to me, and we're trying to get positive attack angles. So when we see negative attack angles, That's something that we really focus on. Bat speed is important up to a point, but at that point, like rotational acceleration is really good. And I know blast really focuses on plane, connection, and rotation. Those are great. If those are the three you want to focus on, that's awesome. Like, make those be the three things that you are really all in on. And I'll tell you, like, for us at Fresno State, our best hitter, who was top 10 in the country in RBIs, led the conference in RBIs, hit a lot of home runs, literally our best hitter this year. Like, her blast motion numbers were bad. Like, and I'll show you on the next chart, like her connection and plane scores were terrible, like terrible scores. And so, some of the best advice that I can give parents and coaches is that, like, there's a huge difference between being a great swing and a great hitter. And we come across hitters that have terrible swings and are great hitters, and we have hitters that have great swings that are terrible hitters, and across the board. And so, when it comes to metrics, when it comes to blast motion, like, we want to improve that. Like, something that she was trying to improve her plane and connection score all year. And those are things that we want to work towards. But if we spend all of our time just overly focused on the numbers and trying to match those numbers, whether it's exit velocity or launch angle, whatever it is, like, we're playing to a metric and we're not playing to hit. And so in the spring, especially as the season gets started, like, our focus is getting on base and doing damage. And we can't spend a ton of time worrying about plane and connection scores or all the different metrics and playing to that, because at the end of the day, we want to have good swings, and we're always going to try to work to getting good swings, but a good swing does not equal a good hitter, and vice versa. And so I want to keep really the context of that to everybody to understand that, a lot of times we get videos of players that have like high bat speed and high exit velocity, and they're just a big, strong hitter, and they're not good hitters, but when they hit off a tee, they have really good numbers. So some of the advice that I would give to some coaches out there is, whenever you're assessing your players, is try to stay off the tee as much as you can. Exit velocity and launch angle, and bat speed, all of those things, attack angle especially, I would stay off the tee as much as possible with that. Using the pitching machine or live pitching is going to give you your most accurate data. And so whenever we're doing assessments, I showed you all that data in the last couple of graphs. None of that stuff is off tee or front toss. It's all off of machine or live pitching, because I noticed that there are hitters that they swing much differently off tee and front toss than they do against live. When you have to have adjustability and you have to have live pitching, it's a much different swing than someone who has no fear swinging off the tee. So that's just one of the things I would do, is make sure you do that. And then at practice, have your players bring their phones. Like, if they have a blast motion sensor, like at Fresno State, we have a team account, and so every one of our hitters has a blast motion sensor. So all of our hitters bring their phones to practice. And so what we'll have them do is we'll have their partner videotape their swings in blast while they're hitting. And so we're getting that video and the data, and by the end of practice, they sync it up to the cloud, and next thing you know, I can go back to my office at the end of practice and watch the video of everyone's swings, look at all their blast motion data. And so I would recommend, as long as they're not on their phones at practice, actually texting and on Snap and Insta and TikTok, if they can bring their phones and have the discipline to do that, and have them videotape their partner's swings, or have their coach videotape their partner swing, or have the coach videotape their swings when they come up to bat, you can get the video and blast motion data at the same time. I think that's really helpful. So that's kind of a little tip that I would recommend to have. And then if I got enough time, I want to just dive in on a couple of our player profiles. So this one right here, it was, like I said, our best hitter this year. She hit for a lot of power. She was top 10 in the country in RBIs. And if you look at her data here, it's not super overwhelming. Like, her bat speed, or average bat speed, was 58, which is good. Her rotational acceleration was 8.6, which, like, across the board for our level and a high D1 level, might be considered a little below average. The same thing if you look at her on-plane efficiency. 49% on plane, where we're trying to get to that 70%. That's a pretty low number for on-plane efficiency. And if you look at her low consistency metrics, like, we really want that early connection to be around 90 degrees. She averaged 128. And what that means is that her bat angle was very, very vertical at her launch. Now, because of that, she had a very vertical swing, which in turn equaled a lot of home runs. Now, you could say that her weakness would be hitting high pitches. Well, actually, when it came to high pitches, she still found a way to hit those. And she also knew that because of her metrics, and because she knew that she had a really vertical bat path and her connection score was so high that she did a really good job of laying off high pitches. So she didn't chase the rise ball very much. She didn't swing at pitches up in the zone very much. If you attacked her at the waist or below, her vertical bat path would hammer those pitches. So when you're looking at that and understanding your hitters, understand that like we were trying to improve that connection score, but at the end of the day, like she was still a great hitter, and we're not going to overhaul her swing just to match that metric. And same thing if you look at her impact position, like we want it to be 80 to 100 degrees, and her average was 102, and so her bat was still not always the best connection score, but I'm telling you, this is one of the best hitters in the country this year in Division I, and her metrics didn't all match up, but she was working towards those metrics. Don't get me wrong. We did spend a lot of time in trying to improve those metrics. Now, let me show you another hitter really quickly. This hitter was, and if you looked at her, she's not overwhelming. She was very average size, average strength, and she was a monster hitter. If you look at her bat speed, like it's above average for college and pros. Her max bat speed is 72. The average D1 rotational acceleration was like 10 or 11. Hers was 15 on average. I mean, her bat speed was through the roof. But one of the things she had a struggle with was attack angle. You can look right there, like her average attack angle was minus 1.3. So again, like you can swing as hard as you want. You can create a ton of rotational acceleration, but if your attack angle is negative, you're going to hit a lot of ground balls, and that's exactly what she did. And so our focus for the fall and the spring after this, and this is her fall swing profile. In the spring, you saw her attack angle go up, and it really helped her put the ball in the air a little bit more line drives, more home runs. And it really helped her. So these swing profiles really help to kind of paint a picture of like where are we trying to get to, and at the end of the day, remembering that my best advice with Blast is that we're trying to get those metrics, we're trying to improve on those things, but at the end of the day, like good hitters are going to hit, and there's a lot more to hitting than just the metrics. And
that was awesome.
That's everything I got for you there.
That was awesome, Matt. There's a couple of takeaways that like I personally took. I think the one question that we get often is like, why do coaches need access to the Blast Connect portal? Why is it important that we track our athletes? And I feel like you really showed us it's important that we're tracking them month over month and year after year, because we need to show them they're improving, right? We want to show them like, hey, like you're trusting this process and look where it's getting you. So that was awesome for you to share us how you track the progress for your players. And then another thing that I loved is like what you said about, not every single player is going to hit the certain metric awesome. Like you could be great. You can be awful. You can have the worst Blast numbers, but still do so great in the game. And there's like three things I always say we cannot measure at Blast, and that is your timing, what's going on in your head, and then what's in your heart. Because those are still three factors that can help you become a good hitter and help you be successful. I'll never forget my college coach one time told me, dead pull hitter, all I did was freaking rotate and try to lift the ball up. And I was always told as a youth player that I was a bad hitter because I can't hit an outside pitch and I need to learn to go hit at the opposite field. And I kept trying to do it. I could never do it. And my college coach told me, hey, why are you working so hard to focus on something that you suck at? If we keep doing that, you're going to lose your strength. So let's try to improve on it. But at the same time, let's make what you're good at better. And that like resonated with me. And it's the same thing with this information, right? Like just because you're not in the green on every single one, you're still damn good at this. And we can still improve and still make you a great player. So thank you for saying that. And I want to just ask you one question. And I think it's a great one. What do you think the difference is in your approach when you're coaching a female versus a male athlete?
I would tell you probably the biggest change in approach is I probably talk a little bit softer, a little less brutal honesty with my female athletes. For me, I think I'm pretty sensitive as well, but I noticed that the brutal honesty method doesn't always work as well with some of the female student athletes. Some do, some love it, but I know that for me, I can be very brutally honest. So I'm trying to soften the blow sometimes when I'm trying to talk about stuff, but that would probably be the biggest thing. But it's really not much different at the highest levels. The student athletes that I've coached, they want the information, they want to get better there, they love the process, and so they are willing to take constructive feedback and really apply it and not be super sensitive about it. So, a little bit, but the one thing I would add, Francesca, the last thing I would say is that to me, the best part about Blast and using hit tracks and all the data is that it creates buy-in. It creates the buy-in for players, for, back in the day when I worked a lot with a lot of pro players in the off season, you throw front toss in the cage, they hit a laser to the back of the cage, and you go like, hey, great hit. You give a thumbs up, but you don't know, you have no idea. And then the year that I bought my Blast Motion, I bought my own hit tracks in 2016, and I noticed that when all the pro players would come into work in the morning, seeing the exit velocity and the bat speed numbers, all of a sudden, this buy-in completely changed. The competitive culture completely changed with the group that I was working with. And so it creates kind of this BS meter, and it also creates this entire buy-in so that if you're actually being a good coach and you're actually helping hitters, it's an incredible buy-in tool to what you're doing. When a hitter sees, hey, coach is teaching me to do this, and my bat speed went up or my exit velocity went up or the data improved, like it creates an incredible amount of trust, relationship building and buy-in versus not having the Blast Motion sensor and kind of just you're trying to convince a player, hey, your swing looks better, or that that hit to the back of the cage was great. It's kind of really subjective that way, but the data really gives us a really objective buy-in ability, and that for me that's the biggest sell on using Blast and other metrics, is that it allows for BS meter and it allows for buy-in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate it. Okay, next, JB, take us away, please.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Matt, that was amazing. For anybody that thought I was texting while that was going on, they're wrong. I was taking notes on what he was saying because some of those things I really, really enjoyed and we're going to implement in my own training, whether it's with students or teams in my program and that kind of thing. So great job on that. Wanted to echo a couple of things also. Some of our best hitters in our program, I try to keep up with the numbers through our Blast and Blaze Connect portal, and their Blast numbers aren't amazing. So, can you go to the next slide? Because this is going to kind of tie into, actually the next one too. We'll skip over that. That was from last week. But in any event, some of our best hitters also, their numbers aren't super impressive. And, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about last week. And Francesca, you mentioned this, there's a lot of things that go into being a great hitter, and certainly technology and data is a piece of that, but it's really, really important that especially for the younger hitters and the parents out there working with their kids, that you understand it's just a piece. So let's see, I want to start with on mine. Last week I talked about playing, and I think one of the things that's really going to complement what Matt was doing today is that I am going to really try to speak to a lot of our younger crowd, and especially parents who are helping their kids. We're in a huge remote training atmosphere right now, out of necessity because we have to. And I know our program has a pretty robust remote training deal that we're doing. So for me, it's important that, after this presentation, like I said last week, I want a kid to be able to go out in the garage, work on something maybe that they like that I presented, and see some results immediately. So that's where kind of my focus is going to be. And last week it was on achieving green plane scores, and then this week it's going to be on connection. And by the way, I got a lot of people reaching out to me last week asking about connection, so excited that I got to come back and talk about it. So a couple of workflow tips. Well, first let me say this: plane and connection are definitely interrelated when you're looking at it from data as it pertains to Blast. If you're working on one, it may change the other, and if you're working on the other, it changes it. So when it comes to the workflow, what I would suggest is pick one or the other and train to that, and then go to the other one and train to it, and then combine them and try to make them work together. And that's what I'm going to take you through in my video part today. So, and then also, these visual and feel cues that I use, I have found to really work for the kids that I work with. And again, I work with some really young kids who are 8 all the way up to young adults. So a lot of times these simple cues, which may seem silly in a way, are very effective, especially for the young athletes. So pay attention to some of those cues and try those, or come up with your own. And then lastly on this slide, the role of technology, and Matt already talked a lot about this, but, never let the numbers define you, but rather be a part of your learning process. Because like I talked about last week with literal hitters that take everything very literal, the last thing I want to see when I'm running a blast type practice with my team is kids getting overly frustrated because of a number. Because to me, that's not picking the right battle. Let your frustrations motivate you, not be something that makes you feel like you're less hitter than you are. So, with that, I say embrace what frustrates you, because failure is how you're going to grow and get better. And this is super crucial to being the best you can be. So, really make sure that you're focused on that as you're out working on these numbers. Okay, next slide. This is just a quick recap from last week, because this is one of the cues that I used. So again, what we're trying to do on this verbal cue is, and also it's a feel cue for the hitter, is just give them a sense of where we're going to leverage the bat off of the shoulder on this first constraint. And again, I use the laser pointer idea. Imagine that there's a laser pointer shooting out of the bat, and we're changing the direction in which that laser is shooting. Okay, we can go ahead and go to the next one. All right, so we're going to get straight into the video here. And so we're going to start off with having Riley just swing super steep. You can see right here that she has a really low connection number. And so now it's going to be starting to make adjustments. Actually, on this first one, I told her to over tilt, because she has a tendency in her, when her numbers are down, she tilts a little bit too much. So I had her over tilt on purpose, because I wanted you guys to see her make an adjustment after this. So you can notice that she still was in yellow there. So now is where she's going to use some of those cues. Can you pause it real quick? So the cue that she used, just so you guys know, in her adjustment, was tilting less at the pelvis. So just having her be a little bit more upright and not tilt quite as much. And then for her, trying the way that her body moves, trying to get her knob to be a little bit flatter as she begins, because she tends to get really vertical, and she tends to over tilt sometimes when she's in games and stuff like that. So that was her particular adjustment there. You can go ahead and start it back. And you can see she went to green there. And like I talked about last week, we don't have time to run through all this, but I think when you're working this process, you got to make it repeatable. So challenge your hitter to be able to make that adjustment and repeat it 3 times in a row. I kind of sped this up to get to that. So now we're going to take away a constraint. Can you pause it real quick? Because I ran past my constraints. I need to bring that back up. The 2 constraints I'm using in this process is going to be, one, taking the stride out of the swing, so that we can kind of minimize the movement between the lower and the upper half. And then the other constraint that we're using, and if you watched last week, these are the same constraints. We are putting the barrel on the shoulder, and we're using the pointer idea to change in how the vertical angle of the bat early in the swing. So those are the 2 constraints, and the idea is we're going to use constraints, get the numbers up, and then we're going to pull the constraints out. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll it again. So now she's not allowing a stride here, but she is taking her hands up off her shoulder, so she's releasing that restraint. And you'll see I kept a lot of the stuff that happened to be a green score there, but I'm going to keep a lot of the stuff where she has to adjust. So I reiterated here, maybe over tilting, so you guys can see how it affects that number. So for her, it dropped it back down, which is still a decent number. But right here, she's going to make her adjustment, less tilt, and now her laser pointer is going to the catcher's mask. And that's going to put her back in the numbers that she's trying to achieve. And then, so now we're going to take another constraint away. We're going to allow her to go ahead and stride. But one of the things I love using, I talked about this last week, is a slow stride, because it really allows the hitter to kind of feel what their body is doing as they're getting their lower half involved. Now you can see she struggled there on that first number, so now she's going to make her adjustment. And she's done this enough to kind of know what that adjustment is. But I think it's awesome as a coach or a parent, watching your kids make their own adjustments and trying to figure this stuff out. And it's all by feel, and just some visual cues in this situation. So there was her normal swing. You can see that she's failed on that as far as what her goal was. So now she's going to make her adjustment. Again, her adjustments a lot of the time is the same. It's trying to be a little bit more upright. And you can see there that she made the correct adjustment. So now we're going to have to put the two scores together. So what you'll see here is I changed the data on there. Can you pause it real quick? And maybe if you want, rewind it. Yeah, just back to that. So now what we're doing is we've gone through, we went through plane last week. We just did connection. So now we're going to put those together. And, I'm just going to tell you straight up, unless your kid is already naturally good at these metrics, this one becomes incredibly frustrating because you get one going and the other one's not right, and then you just go back and forth, and it can be really, really frustrating, but it also can be, a fun challenge if you help make it. So this is us kind of working through that process of keeping both the plane and connection score above 60. And you can notice that I changed the iPad readout to have plane connection and attack angle. I'm not talking about attack angle today because I could spend a whole nother hour just on that and where she struggles on this sometimes, but we are trying to get those two greens to happen. Okay, you can roll it. So she's back to her constraints. We're going to go from ground, start from where we started with our constraints. The barrel's on the shoulder, no stride. And that particular one, she did hit two greens. So again, if she was working out on this right now, we'd want her to be able to make that repeatable. Now we're going to take a constraint away and let her get her hands and put them where she wants them. And you can see that it dipped down to yellow again. So the yellow, but she had green connection. So now she's got to try to feel what it takes here. And again, it's always going to be a play. Can we pause it real quick? When you're trying to figure out these adjustments, it's always going to be a play between the amount of tilt that you use and then the amount of where the bat angle is. So you got to remember that, and we're going to look at this in the 3D analysis, but you can achieve a steeper bat angle two ways. You could very simply do this, but you could also do this. So it's always going to be a play between the amount of tilt and the amount of bat tip or bat angle that you create early in the swing. So you have to really find that sweet spot and work those numbers. Okay, you can roll it. Okay, so she's trying to get two greens. It looks like she did there. So now we're going to take another constraint away. We're going to put her in the slow stride again so she can focus on feeling the lower half and look to see what we get. So again, you can see her plane score wasn't great there. So again, she's going to have to try to figure it out here, and she's going to try to get her knob a little bit higher as she strides out. That's typically her adjustment. And everybody's different, right? So there's her double green score. And can you stop it here? So I wanted to show you guys this. I wanted you to see the adjustment that she just made between two swings. If you look on the left, this was her as her foot was getting down, but what you can see is the one on the left is a steeper angle at that part of the swing. Now we're talking about, very minute changes here, but I'm sure as all of y'all know from using Blast, the smallest change can affect the numbers greatly, right? So if you notice on the left, she's a little steeper at this part of her swing. You can see the gap between the barrel and the head, and then you can also see that her hands are basically in the exact same place. I use the graphics behind her a lot to do this, so you can notice I use that blast banner. You can see the knob of the barrel is roughly in the same place, but the barrel is definitely off of her head more, which means it has more vertical angle right there. So the adjustment that she makes on the one on the right is she flattens the barrel a little bit as she's striding, and that flattening of that barrel is what allows her to get her plane score up. Okay, so that's just, I want you guys to see that adjustment. Okay, let's pause this real quick. You guys are gonna love this. So when you're trying to get plane and connection to work together, I highly recommend understanding this 3D analysis because I'm a visual person myself. A lot of my players are very visual, And, you know, sometimes just seeing the numbers over there, vertical bat angle, all that, you know, if you're a geek like me, you're really into it. But for other people, they just, it makes more sense if I can just show them how it looks in this picture rather than try to explain the number and how it correlates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down how to kind of look at least the way that I try to teach my kids to look at this 3D graphic. Okay, let's go ahead and spin it. So on that particular one, she had a yellow plane score. Let's go ahead and pause it right here. So she had a yellow plane score and she had a green connection score. So when you're looking at this, there are two arrows. Those arrows are exactly at the same angle, meaning I put and copy and pasted them. So if you look at the arrow on the top, you'll notice that the right side of the top of the arrow is right up against the black line, which that black line, for those of you who may not know, represents where the barrel is when it starts its downward path. So if you look at that arrow and then you look at the arrow below it, how it relates to the line where the barrel makes contact with the ball, you'll notice that the line on the bottom is no longer parallel. So what that means is the line on the bottom when she made contact is not parallel with the line on the top. You can see that the line on the top actually is slanted more downward instead of being parallel. So that's why even though her plane score is good, it's not above green. If she could get those two lines to be a little more parallel, then she's going to get a double green, I mean, she's going to get a green score. So for her, it all goes back to her adjustments. She's going to need to either lift the barrel knob and point her laser a little higher to create parallel, or she may need to tilt a little bit less. She tends to tilt quite a bit. I try to keep her in the 30s, but a lot of times she gets into the 40s. So if she tilts a little less, it can help as well. All right, let's go ahead and spin it, and then we'll stop it when you see the 3 red arrows on their part. We're going to stop it right there. So now we're looking at how connection plays into this. So these arrows aren't necessarily laid out in any way that's going to that determines the angles. I just have them basically pointing at 3 spots. So the arrows on the top, the 2 on the top, are representing, again, where the barrel starts versus the axis of tilt of the body. And you're trying to create that 90 degrees in between those two. And if you just kind of look at them visually, you can see that the arrow on the left and the top right, they're a little bit squeezed in. So they're a little bit less than 90. And then if you look at the one on the bottom, you can also see that those are actually look almost like a perfect 90 degrees. If you look at them, they look really, really close. As a matter of fact, it's 88 degrees. So it's, you know, the eye can't really see much difference there. But it's a good way for you to start to understand, if you're doing this, where it's going wrong. Okay, let's go ahead and spin it. And we can see a couple adjustments here. Okay, so again, there's a double yellow there. You can see, if you pause this real quick here, I'll make this one quicker because I feel like everybody should be kind of catching on. And obviously that's the cool thing about this being on demand. You guys can go back if it's kind of like, you know, if it's not quite registering right now. But notice on the white arrows, again, those 2 black lines that are touching the white arrows are obviously not parallel. They're not both touching the arrows. So you can see that she's struggling on her plane score a lot more there. You can also see that the red looks greater than a 90 if you look at the 2 red arrows, and that is the 94. Now that's still not bad, but again, it visually allows you to see where she needs to improve. So here, if she tilts a little bit more on that 31 and takes it in, and she still has the same barrel path, then she may connect perfectly. Or she could take her knob and lift it a little bit to create that 90 on her early connection. Okay.
That's awesome. This is like really great stuff. For time purposes, sorry, what'd you say, JB?
I think we're at the last one after this too, just so you know, because.
Okay, yeah, totally, go for it.
Okay, so here's the double green. And we'll just keep this short and sweet. You'll see that the 2 white arrows match up perfectly with the black lines, and that the 2 red arrows look like a 90-degree angle. And so there's the double green that we were shooting for in this particular analysis of the 3D. So I would highly recommend using the 3D analysis to look at how the play between plane and connection work. And that's it on my video.
Thank you so much. Sorry I interrupted. I didn't mean to. I mean, I did mean to, but like not really meaning to. Thank you so much for sharing those drills. I really love how you're honestly, like, you're incorporating glass by trying to get these players to understand their feel. Like, that's so hard right now, I feel like, for players to understand how to feel their swing and how to feel their adjustments. And what you're doing is not just trying to adhere to like hitting blast benchmarks and hitting goals, but it's getting these players to understand, hey, that adjustment worked. Remember how that felt? Now replicate it again. And then you have the cues with the metrics to reinforce that it's working. So thank you again so much, JB.
Absolutely.
Jeremy,
really good stuff.
Please
Really good.
take us home. You might be muted, so you're going to have to unmute yourself.
I'm going to have to get off my phone. How's that?
Great. You're
better?
awesome.
Turn the volume up so I can hear everybody. All right. Well, first of all, guys, that was awesome. Great stuff. I have a lot of notes here too. Was taking notes. What I'm going to be talking about today is how to utilize your blast with your players. I think it's very important now with everything that's going on to be able to connect with your players. And not just connecting with them to make sure that they're obviously doing hitting or doing this or doing that, but just to make sure they're okay. It was very important for me to be able to connect with my players through this stuff and just find out how they're doing, how their families are doing. Because we don't know everybody's, some people have lost their jobs, some haven't, softball is life to us, right? All these people here on this panel today, we do this every day. And for them, this could be a way for them to get away from other problems. When I step on the field, right, it's like those fences out there have like a spider web. I don't think of anything else but those kids and playing ball and having fun. So I use this as a time to get them better, get them excited about something. I love this, you guys talking about the numbers. I don't have to touch on that now because you guys hit on it. John Cheetah from St. Thomas said to me once that take your frustration and turn it into fascination. So be fascinated at why those numbers are down, what's going on with this drill, how to understand. So I'm going to start touch base with how I connect with my players using Blast. First thing is to make it a lot easier on yourself is to set up a Zoom meeting or set up whatever type of meeting with your players so they understand how to download videos, because that was the biggest hurdle that I hit, was they weren't downloading videos so that I wasn't able to see them. So have a quick meeting with them. Your Blast rep will be able to show you, even a slide for you, just to show all your players that, hey, this is how you download the videos so that we can see them. That'll help out a ton. The other thing we want to make sure you do is, if you look on the page that I have here right now, is if you have a lot of teams, make sure you roster all your players on those teams. As an admin, I can go now to any one of my teams, pop it up, see which players are hitting, see which players are not using the Blast, talk to the coaches, be able to do that. So this is what pops up for me as admin. I get to see all the swings. I have one of my teams pulled up right now. What I'll do from here is then I'll then press on. You can go to the next slide. And this is what pops up. So this is Audrey's swings right now. Great thing about Blast is they do it for you, right? Here's the insights. They're talking about she needs to work on her connection, and then they give you the drills across the bottom. So your players can be doing this on their own. Right? So some of them don't even know that's even on there. You can go to the next slide. So if you press on the swing data, then all the data pops up. So I go through, if I'm going to analyze a swing, I go through, first of all, before I talk to the athletes, I'll go through all their numbers, all their analytics, kind of see what they need to work on. Maybe it's, in this case, it's probably rotation. She's hitting the ball pretty hard. So her scores are pretty high, but there's some rotation stuff we'll probably work with. So I'll look through all of that. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see so if you see in the upper right hand corner there, the swing details and then show videos only. If you hit that show videos only, all the videos will then pop up. So if you look on the left hand side, you'll see underneath if they swing right or left, it'll be a little camera, and that'll tell you what videos they have. So what I'll do is I'll look through all their numbers. I'll kind of get an idea of what I want to talk to that player about. And then I'll watch 2 or 3 of their videos. I make sure they show me 3 videos. They understand that, hey, just hold the camera up sideways, because I'm getting girls hitting in Crocs. I'm getting girls hitting in their garage, in their living rooms. I'm in Minnesota. I just snowed a week ago. So there were girls going outside when it was 32. So I got some videos last week of the fireplace was right behind them. I'm like, you're hitting in your living room? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's crazy. So then we'll hit, if you slide to the next one, it'll pop up on the video. Okay, so this is what you'll get to see. So we'll get to see the video of your player. Okay, so what I'll do from this point on is, if you look in the upper corner, it'll say analyze. So we'll hit the analyze button. You can go to the next one. And now this will give you an option to be able to draw on the screens. You can put dots. This is where I put a couple dots on there. You can draw lines, you can draw circles, and there's tons of stuff you can do. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can put grids on it, you can mirror it. I mean, you just play with it. It's so much fun. So there's 2 ways that I've done this. Is I will then, if you look in the upper right hand corner, you can press record. You can record over the video, commentate over it, draw your lines, do all those things, save it to your library, and then automatically send it to that player for them to watch. Okay, I started doing it that way. I live out in the boondocks. My internet is slow as can be, so it took me a long time for that to download to my library. So what I did, switched it to go to a Zoom meeting. So what I do is I get to this screen, have it ready, have everything, all my notes that I want to talk to that player about, and then I just call them up. Zoom meeting. They're all sitting around right now. They're at homework. They'll instantly jump on. I've never had a problem. So hey, 11 o'clock, can you jump on a Zoom meeting? I'll sit down. And this is where that connection piece really came in, and I really like it a lot more than just sending a video, because now they're involved with their swing. They're looking at their swing. They're analyzing their own swing. I'll talk to them. What do you see? Give them a voice, right? Then they start getting excited. They start seeing the numbers, and we'll just talk. Usually when it starts, I'll be like, hey, how's the family? How's everybody doing? And connecting on a personal side and and an athletic side too. So we'll walk through the video, we'll talk through it. I'll let her know what she's doing great, what she's doing well, what I see that she needs to work on. And then from that point, we'll get off the Zoom call. I'll say, hey, expect a practice plan. So if you want to go to the next slide. And so I'll make her a custom practice plan. So if you hit the training button on the top, you're going to go down to workouts and practices. It's the 3rd one down there. You hit that for me, please, if you want to go to the next slide. And this is what pops up. So these are all my workouts on practices on my schedule right now. So it'll say all my players that are on there. It has their schedule. It has their practice plan in there. When they're done with their practice plan, they can write done. They're not very good at doing it. So I just go back, just look to see if they're taking their cuts or not. One other thing that's really important, this piece is you want to make sure that if you're doing a lot of drills, and I don't know, and I do a lot of some stop drills, like I know JB was talking about, going just from stride, already have their stride. A lot of times I'll have them take their sensors off to make sure that the metrics are reading off of full swings, or just stop their session. I think you can get a lot of different numbers, and that's where you'll see the numbers will go up and down. You'll be like, okay, are you doing extension stops or split grip to contact or something like that, stopping your swing, because your scores are just going up and down. So just make sure that they kind of know that too. So from here, this just shows all the practices that I have going on. I'm not really paying a ton of attention to this, like I said, because they're not writing done. We'll get back to that. If you want to go to your next slide, please. So then in the practice buttons, this is all my customized practice plans. So you just go to that plus sign there and then hit create a practice. So what I found out, a couple things. My organization needs to work on rotation a lot. So what I did is I just made a generic version of rotational hitting drills. So I took all my rotational hitting drills that I have in my library and put them on one plan. So I can just go to that plan, I can hit duplicate, and then just add and subtract off of that. It actually saved me about 10 minutes per player than me going through all these. So the other thing that will help save you a lot of time is if you already have a practice plan for a player, leave it in there. So if you look at 80s, 80 Thomas at the top there, there's 80 Thomas and there's 80 Thomas too. Okay, that's her second week of practice. So then she sends a video right after the next week. So I'll just go to her 80 Thomas too, because I think she has another video ready for me. And then just go off of that practice plan, add some stuff and take some things off. Okay, this is what the practice plan will look like when you start it. So I usually put their practice name, Sally swings a lot, that's this one, swings at everything. And then you can go down and there's a little add button. So you can go to the next page. If you press that little plus button underneath your swings, this is where your drills will come up. Okay, this is where you're gonna have to put a lot of time in as an organization. Okay, I have 31 drills in here. I've added all my drills, and I'll show you here in a little bit how to add drills. But every one of these drills has a video attached to it. So when I do this practice plan, I just pop up, I hit whatever drills I want them to do. I'll press add to practice. Go ahead, you can go to the next one. And this is what pops up. So let's say it's a 90-degree rotation drill, split grip to contact, stride, stop, swings. Blast, this is the one I stole from Blast. One of my coaches figured out how to take the ones from Blast and put it into my personal one. So it's a Blast PVC pipe drill. I wish I could just take them all because I use a lot of those drills. And then you will either schedule and assign once you get that practice plan up. So we go to the next slide, please. Then you can schedule and assign. So if you schedule and assign, what this is going to let you do is you can put the calendar on there. So you can put a calendar. So I put the date 1 week. I want them doing these drills every single day. And then at the bottom, you can either assign your whole rosters, you can assign players, you can assign everybody in the organization. So I just assign one player to it. You press schedule. Go to the next one, please. And then that will automatically send it to them in their email. So that's why it's very important to make sure that their email is attached to their phone. So that practice plan that you sent out will be attached to their phone. Okay. So this is if you just assign it without scheduling. Go to the next one. So what they'll get on their phone is they'll get that practice plan. You'll be able to put in there how many reps you want them to do on that drill. You'll be able to put in a quick note on maybe your focus point is going to be at contact. I want to make sure you have eyes at contact, or make sure that we have on your tilts or whatever drill you want, whatever you want on that. So once they see that, they can write done from their phone that they did it. It'll shoot it back saying it's done. Like I said, not too many of my girls are doing that yet, but that's the work in progress. So on your practice, and if you want to manage your drills, this is where you go through. You go to your training tab, back to practices. You hit the manage drills button, and you can go to the next one, please. And this is where these are all the drills that I have up. Okay, so I'll have the drills, 3-plate, 3T, 45-degree drill. Some of the drills I have a description. They're created by myself because I created them all in my basement with my sons. And then any coach can add them. Okay, what this has done, what this has helped with is also get on a lot of the coaches on the same page with verbiage, right? So whatever I'm saying, they can look at this stuff. Obviously, the blast has been great because now we're all talking plane, where I was talking about extension just a year or two ago. So it keeps all the coaches on the same page, but then it also gives them access to this. So now each coach can do their own practice plan. They can put drills in here that they want on their own. They can now customize practice plans because obviously if you have a ton of teams, I only have 18 teams, but each one of my coaches can make their own, can use these drills or whatever drills they want and just create their own practice plan and customize it to players. So we're not cookie cutter and every swing, because like we talked about, every swing's different. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so cool thing about that too is when those girls get that and they're like, I have no idea what this drill is, right? They can just press on their phone on the name of the drill. It's gonna pop up the screen. And there's a video of me in my basement showing them how to do a stride stop drill. It tells them what the drill is. It has a little bit of a description. It's working on separation, weight transfer, and load. So then they'll know how to do it. I really tell my ladies, my athletes, to watch the videos just in case. Even if you do know it, there might be something new that you forgot. We'll go to the next one real quick. I know we're getting close on time. If if you do not get the videos and the girls are saying, hey, I didn't get your video and you can't see them, this is a quick and easy way to see and to go into their library. So you can go into their library to analysis, hit video analysis on the bottom, you can go to the next one, and it'll pop up. So if you pop up with their name in the bottom there, you can just hit every one of your players. So if they have swings that they have videos of their swings in their library, you'll be able to access them even if they didn't send them to Blast. And then also from here, if you go to the next slide, you can also from there compare videos. So you can do side-by-sides. You can take videos from college athletes, baseball players, and then put a side-by-side with whichever athletes you want. So next slide, please. That's it. So that's pretty fast. A lot of stuff to kind of take in. But I'd say the biggest thing is get some videos from your athletes and just start playing with it and sending it around. And that's the easiest way to be able to. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
That's fantastic.
Well, you just basically schooled me in how to use Blast Connect properly. I didn't even know some of those functions that were in there. That's awesome. And honestly, that's so important because there's so many different things you can do in the portal that not a lot of coaches really dive deep in there to figure that all out, and then really showing them how you're able to remote train. That was freaking awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. That was super, super important and super helpful. So obviously we're 5 minutes over. So for time purposes, we can't do any of the Q&As right now, but we will answer every question and answer it via email. I did happen to notice, though, a lot of people asked in the questions if they could get access to the previous webinars, and you can. They're actually all at blastmotion.com and also within our Instagram and Twitter handles. So just go for those resources to find them. And if you can't, just hunt down what our email address is. Mine's really simple. It's fna@blastmotion.com, and we'll get it sent over to you. I'm not tech savvy, so sometimes it's easier just to go right to the source. And of course, if you're interested about purchasing Blast and like wanting to go with our remote training program, head on over to our website and we have those options for you. Last but not least, we're going to do this again. Why the heck not? It's working out well, right? Here's the lineup that we have for you next week. We have Krista Stoker, Christy Connor, and Randy Kay and Victor Hambrick from the Firecrackers out of Arizona. They're going to each be telling us a little bit of how they've been able to use Blast during this time, but how they've been able to be successful within their own organization. So thank you guys so much. Please pepper us with questions, and we'll see you next week. And thank you to our panelists. Y'all rock. You guys have a great weekend. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Great job, everybody.
Thank you.